Good morning and welcome back to the Closers Inner Circle podcast with your host Denise Griffiths and Ben Gay III. Our topic today is busy is not productive, sales time management strategies that actually increase revenue. Now, Ben Gay III is internationally recognized as one of the best sales trainers in the world and the author of the Closer series, and he has spent decades teaching sales professionals how to focus on income producing activities instead of confusing motion with progress. We all do that. It's just easy to fall into that. So in this episode, we break down the difference between being active and being effective. Emails, meetings, CRM updates, and preparation, especially in AI. The new AI world we live in all have their place, but sales success really does come from meaningful conversations, consistent outreach, and disciplined follow-up. And Ben's talked a lot about that follow-up. It's important. So if you've ever ended a long day exhausted, but you're unsure of what actually moved forward, this conversation will give you clarity and direction. And this series is designed, we're in part A of a 10-part series, is designed for serious professionals who want measurable results, and part 8 sharpens that focus. Today, we are sponsored by Bradley Roush, and I love the work he does. If your best clients aren't renewing or sending strong referrals, write that down, referrals. It usually means that your post-sale experience is not living up to the promise made during the sale. Bradley partners with founder-led coaching and consulting businesses to help turn more clients into renewals, referrals, and additional revenue using simple post-sale systems instead of more ad spend. This is why I love the guy. I mean, he's speaking my language. So if you are ready to make the clients you've already closed worth more, visit Bradley Roush, BradleyRausch.com. And before we launch into our presentation, I need to tell you why you need to have the closers books on your desk or in your entrepreneurial library. Part 1 lays the groundwork by detailing salesperson types, closer traits, customer profiles, basic closes. There are 35 psychological tips. I think I've counted them, but I may have missed one or two. Reasons prospects hesitate, 20 key closing techniques, 15 common objections with 45 rebuttals, and over 100 practical how-tos that focus on real psychology, proven scripts, objection handling, and guiding prospects confidently. Write that down too. Confidently from interest to decision without fluff. Did I tell you I've read these books? I have. And part 2 advances this for closers, elite closers, with sophisticated mindset tactics, conversation control, and the discipline needed for reliable high performance, potentially doubling your income. Overall, the closers shift focus to income generating actions over busy work. We're talking about that today. Instilling process, structure, confidence, and clarity as affirmed by their status as the sales closers' Bibles. And Ben doesn't even know how many sales copies have been sold, but I think it's probably over 2 million. I'll ask him. So go to Ronzoni Books on eBay and get them. Grab these books. They're important to you. Good morning, Ben. I am now officially tired of talking. The mic is yours.
So I was here for a miracle. I'm happy to hear that. The number on the closers part 1 is 10.5 million. When we quit counting 30 years ago, I was away from the business for almost 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was gone, the business ran just fine. But while I was away, they lost track. They didn't know that we were keeping count. So they lost track of sales, and I couldn't say a number
Sorry.
that I couldn't prove in court. Well, I can prove 10.5 million 30 years ago. And that doesn't count the closers parts 2, 3, 4, which is coming from you pretty quick. Part 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all in the works. So 10.5 million on part 1. I think other people claim the same thing about their book, but I sincerely believe that's the best-selling book on selling ever written. You could squint and say, well, how about Think and Grow Rich? That was written for salespeople. True, but it's not a sales training book. It's more of a book of active philosophy. So, for what it's worth, I think it's the #1 best-selling sales book ever written, 10.5 million copies 30 years ago, and I really don't know what it is now or care. We've claimed the #1 spot, and that's it.
Well,
But
and these books are
it has
still
been an
selling.
exciting ride. I've met virtually and in person people from all over the world. I started to say the English-speaking world, but it's translated into, I think, 26 languages or something. Well, more than that, when we sold the rights to the closers in India, they got the rights to produce it. I don't know if they have or not in 26 different uh, languages and or dialects in that one country. So I've seen somebody handed me a book one time, said, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "Well, it's in another language. I can't read it, but it looks nice." And someone said, "It's the closers." So
I
I
bet you
couldn't,
looked at it
couldn't
again.
tell. But that has been, if you're thinking about writing a book, and we'll from time to time do a whole thing on publishing books and what my secret has been for building the Closers series. But if you're thinking about writing books, I'm prone to sales, personal development, and marketing type books, although I've written others. Um, the joy is not, and the reason to do it is not necessarily the profits on any one book. It's what it does for you in your whole business life and therefore your personal life. A lot of my best friends came from a business contact to start with. But what I call the Closers series is it's my passport to success. You get some a credible book or two credible books published, and then want to go speak to somebody, the barriers come down. You're the guy, you're the guy that wrote a book. I don't care if it's on auto repair. You're the book that you wrote the Bible of the auto repair business. So when they have a convention, you're logically the one up. People believe that if you've written a book, you're different than the rest of the world, that you're more experienced, etc. So read mine. I would encourage you to do it. There's a wealth of information in there, far more than I knew when I started in selling. And much of what's in there is what I learned along the way. Sales Closing Power, for instance, is a book I wrote for J. Douglas Edwards after he died, from my seminar notes, from his actual recordings, etc. So he lives on. And I've sort of partnered up with Doug Edwards after death. We were acquaintances, friends, and he worked for me occasionally. But we weren't buddies until he died. And now we're close friends. I'm the last living guy who got trained by him and and the only one who wrote a book about him, and so on. So publishing books on your area of interest can be your passport to success, can be your ticket in the door to people who maybe didn't know about you before. A guy asked me, I've had this happen before, so my answer was cocked and ready. But a guy said to me just a few days ago, "Well, I've never heard of you or the Closers." And I said, "Wow, I've still got work to do. How long have you been in selling, not counting yesterday?" It would be like walking into a bookstore, seeing the Closers and go, "Wow, there's a book on selling." That's like walking into a Christian bookstore and saying, "Ooh, look at that. We got a Bible. I didn't know that." So become that to your people. Become an expert by putting it down on paper and recording it, doing audible and so on. And it vaults you above the competition who either haven't written one or haven't promoted it properly. So I encourage that. And Bradley Roush, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Welcome to our sponsorship program. I will, at the minute we get off the phone, I'm going to go to your website. But I've heard from Denise nothing but good things. So welcome to the family. We appreciate your support and sponsorship and hope it pays off for you big time. Not only now, but over the years, because we make these shows evergreen. So somebody may call you 20 years from now and say, I was just listening to Ben Gay and Denise Griffiths, and they endorsed your stuff. And you're going, Ben Gay and Denise Griffiths. Who is that? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
we're
did the
famous.
podcast for them back in 2026.
Right.
So I think that was a wise move on your part. And now we go to busy, not productive. One of the first things I learned, just phrasing it a little differently, um, in my early days of selling, I got off to a rocky start for about 6 months and then took off like a rocket and made millions of dollars, have given over 5,000 paid appearances to about 2.5 million people, I'm guessing. And that may not sound impressive to people in the internet age. I can talk to 2.5 million people today if I put my mind to it. But I'm talking about in-person handshaking, swapping business cards, knowing one another. So 5,000 paid appearances, 2.5 million people, 36 books, I think it is now. And it all started on Wednesday, September 15th, 1965, when I answered a little ad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and it said, if you know anything about marketing plans and want to make more money, dial this number. Well, I didn't know what a marketing plan was, but I was looking in the paper because I needed to make more money. I was putting a wife through nursing school, and money was, thank God my father was a food broker. So most days out of samples and dented cans, I could bring home dinner. Not exactly what we wanted, but I could bring home dinner in a sample cooler. And that's to a large degree how we ate until the business took off. And even then, I was busy, not productive, to take today's title. And one day, my sponsor, Bill Dempsey, the late Bill Dempsey, came up to me in a opportunity meeting. We were in a multi-level marketing business called Holiday Magic Cosmetics. And where are your people? And that's a whole different story. I hadn't learned the script. I wasn't bringing people to the meetings. I wasn't allowed to give a meeting from the front of the room. It was scripted, and I didn't know the script, etc. And I said, well, Bill, I'm here every night, and he said, I know, but why? You don't bring anybody. You can't give the meeting. And the reason you don't bring anybody, I guarantee, is you don't know the scripts. You need to learn the scripts. He said, what you have here is a problem where, and I'll never forget this, you're confusing activity with achievement. And that's busy, not productive. I was busy racing around in my little cheap sport coat with the 2 pairs of slacks that came with it and the interchangeable vest. I don't mean two vests. You wore them one way and then turned it inside out and wore it the other way. Uh, I looked like somebody dressed in his father's old clothes, and I wouldn't bring anybody, and I didn't know the scripts because I was confusing activity with achievement. And then when I started running businesses, I carried a degree of that disease along with me. Meaningless meetings, not only attending them, calling them and running them. I've got nothing against meetings. A lot of good is done in them, but they've got to be structured. It's achievement, not activity. And then if you don't make them meaningful, you get people who don't want to be there anymore. And then they're bored. Look up and down the table or around the room, and you'll see them drumming their fingers and looking at the ceiling. That's confusing activity with achievement. If we have a meeting today, we must be important, and therefore that'll carry us a long way. It won't. It won't carry you anyway. In fact, it'll slow what little progress you might be making down. So how do you solve that problem? There are numerous ways, and we talk about them, and we'll talk about them more in the future. But one of the things that saved me was Dr. Napoleon Hill. I became president of the company way too early. I was 25 years old, a high school graduate, uh, didn't know how to read a balance sheet. I could barely balance my own checkbook. And there I am, based on speaking ability and sales, not management or education or anything else. There I am, president of a company that adjusted for inflation. We were taking in $1 million a day then, and adjusted for inflation, that's 3.5 billion with a B dollars today. And now I'm a high school graduate, 25 years old, and the only thing I had going for me was a degree of personality and hard work. Napoleon Hill came to our office to present the owner of the company, my boss, William Penpatrick, with a plaque and a signed book. In the book, Bill Patrick was named as one of the 5 most important or 5 most dynamic, I forget what the title was, people currently working in the world. And so that got him in the building. On the way out of the building, I learned later from Bill Patrick and from Napoleon Hill himself that Bill said to him, I didn't know Napoleon Hill was in the building, wasn't there for the little ceremony or anything. I was busy working. I was busy trying to look productive. And Bill, apparently on the way back to the front door to escort him to his car or limousine or whatever, said, I've got a young man I want you to meet. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, I wasn't there. I got a young man I want you to meet, and he's got a lot of potential. He's president of the company, but I think we're not getting the best out of him because I don't think he's comfortable walking down that long hallway to my office to tell me what he doesn't know, or he's afraid, or whatever. So if you're interested in working with him after you meet him, I'll be happy to pay you to be his whatever, friend, consultant, mentor. I don't know what term they used at the time. And Napoleon Hill tentatively agreed until he met me. Bill knocked on the door, opened it, and there he stood with a little old man. Dr. Hill was 84 years old and not in the great physical health. He died 2.5 years later, standing there leaning on a cane. And Bill said, I want you to meet somebody. So I, being a Southern gentleman, bolted around the corner of my desk and said, hi, I'm Ben Gay. What's your name? And Bill Patrick looked at me like I was from Mars and said, Ben, this is Dr. Napoleon Hill. I said, oh, my God, I have your book. And Dr. Hill, it's an honor to meet you. He said, call me Nappy. And that started our first fight. Because I never called him Nappy. I never even said the word Nappy until after he was dead, telling other people the story. He was Dr. Hill to me. He was old enough to be my great-grandfather biologically. He was the author of a book that they used to say, I don't know if it was true or not, but the way it was introduced to me was Think and Grow Rich. Sold more books than any other book, either in the world or in the United States, than the Bible. A side story, one day he was up at the house after we started working together, and my wife had placed a copy of Think and Grow Rich on the coffee table, so we were supposed to discover it, we sat around reading it every night as a family. And I was sort of embarrassed because I knew what she was up to, and Dr. Hill knew what she was up to. But a great lesson came out of it. I said, oh, look, Dr. Hill, a copy of Think and Grow Rich. And told him how I got it. Bill Dempsey gave it to me the day I joined the business. And I said, I really like that book. And as we're standing there looking at it, I said to Dr. Hill, how does it feel to have written the second best-selling book in the world or in the country or whatever it was? And he said, best-selling, least read. And over the years, I've come to understand what he means. Almost everybody in business, I may be exaggerating a little bit, has a copy of Think and Grow Rich. But if you go to look at it, most of them have never been opened. The spine isn't broken. The pages aren't smudged. Nobody's underlined anything or whatever. They bought it for show, not to learn. So that was oversimplified my first lesson from Dr. Hill, and he taught me many others. Among them was what we came to call, because we developed it together, a daily success system. We're going back to busy, not productive. A daily success system that would shape up my life. And the way that came up, I was talking to him one day. I was doing 300 appearances a year back then, counting travel and weekends and all. That's almost every day, and flying around like crazy. I once did 33 speeches in 33 different cities in 11 days. One in the morning, midday, and one in the evening for 11 days, running 33 grand total. And with that type of schedule in mind, Dr. Hill said to me, Ben, how do you fit family into this activity? He was very interested in family life because he didn't have a good family life. He was married, divorced, what's that thing where you weren't officially, where they pretend like they weren't married and then they nullify the marriage. So married, divorced, or whatever the other term is, 3 times. Some of his children, if not all of them, didn't speak to him. And he learned as much about getting along with the family from me as I learned about business and personal development from him. He said, how do you fit family into this? You're always on the go. And I said, well, I fit it into the nooks and crannies. And he said, we found the problem. I said, what problem? He said, I want you to live a happy, successful, fulfilled life. And you won't do that fitting family into the nooks and crannies. Your wife and your son, I only had one at the time, deserve better. So he ordered for me, or had me order, or whatever. We started working on the problem right then. But during that process, he had me order a daily calendar. It's the one in front of me is the 2026 At a Glance Standard Diary. And I'll even give you, if I can find it real quickly, the company that does it. Pardon me while I paw through the book real quick. At a Glance, you reorder at a glance, all one word, ataglance.com, reorder. That's .com/reorder. And the product number that I have in my hand is S as in Sam, D as in David, 389, SD 389. And you'll have to buy one where 3 of the months are already gone. But trust me, it's worth it, and do it every year for the rest of your life. The advantage of this calendar is not one of those with the little squares where if you were really running the business, you couldn't write what you needed to do in those little squares. This is more the size of a hymnal, or a good size hardback book, and every day has a full page. I'm looking at Wednesday, 4th of March right now, and I'm not going to count them, but I'm guessing there's 30 lines you could write something on. And I've got about half of them filled up, including this show, 10 a.m. Denise Griffith's show. And I won't cross it out until we hang up and get off the phone. But I said, well, how's this? Once we had it, and I had his in my hand, I said, how's this going to change my life? He said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to start living life intentionally. For instance, how many vacations do you take a year? I said, I'm not a vacation guy. What we do is we take long weekends, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday to get there, and Monday to get home, about 4 times a year. And when my calendar came, he said, all right, let's block them out. And we picked out 4 long weekends in the year in advance, wrote them down on the, spread them out, about equally. And that day, those days were gone. You don't do business on those days. You go with your family or just your wife, whatever your situation is, to wherever you want to go. We tend to go over to the Northern California coastline, up near Mendocino, one of the most beautiful spots in the world. Occasionally we swap out, but basically we spend 4 long weekends in and around Mendocino. And I don't have to think about it. As soon as I got this calendar this year, they were written in, yellow highlighted, and those days are done. Nothing else intervenes. And then we have a date night. And that generally is Friday night, just my wife and Gigi and I, just the 2 of us. That's not friends out for dinner. It's the 2 of us holding hands, staring into each other's eyes, sipping a little wine, and having alone time. And then other things come up, back in the day when we had little kids running around the house, baseball practice or whatever. I was the third base coach for the worst team in the history of Little League Baseball. And but we had a great time. And you put those in. And after you get everything that's personal in your calendar, then you start working the other things around it. For instance, Wednesday tends to be a podcast day. There are 3 major podcasts, major to me anyway, that I do on Wednesdays. And Denise is the first one up every Wednesday morning. And then I do one with Don Cody with the Summiteers organization. And then I do one with Mark Harris, who's an expert in real estate investment. He's a consultant, very successful guy. And I appear on their podcasts and shows and so on. So those are all blocked in. And then I have days that I tend to, if I'm going to, for instance, I don't take important meetings if I can, unless it's so important I have to, but rarely do I take meetings on Mondays or Fridays. Monday, because the weekend build up, backup of mail, everything. And Friday, because I'm a normal human being, I'm heading for the door starting around noon or 1 or something. And we've got that date night dinner coming up. So I try and stay away from major commitments on Mondays and Fridays, although I make some exceptions. That puts my work week to Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they are packed with activity that leads to achievement. So that's how you begin to block out. You start running your life instead of the other way around. I have a good client who said to me as he came on board about a year ago, I'm guessing, he said, now we have this Saturday morning session. And I said, oh, well, I'm really sorry. You'll either have to move that, which involves moving a lot of people's schedule, or just understand I won't be there. He said, why? I said, I don't do calls and technically office work, business work on Saturday or Sunday. Those are time for family reflection. I get a lot of writing done on those days. And I'm glad I said the word writing because that reminded me, Stephen Douglas Williford, my co-author on several projects, including a book we did called The Winner's Edge. I paid him $20,000 to write The Winner's Edge, ghostwrite it. I wrote a chapter. He wrote a chapter. And I said, wow, that's good. I don't need to change it at all. He said, okay, you write the next one. And I said, I paid you to write the book. He said, well, I know, but I really want it to have your feeling in it. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to write a chapter. You're going to write a chapter. I'll write the next chapter. You write a chapter. I said, that wasn't the concept. He said, well, it's not the concept, but I'm doing you a huge favor. He said, you're as good a writer as I am. The problem is you don't have the discipline to write on a regular basis. I said, well, I write when I'm inspired and feel good and all. He said, that's not good enough. Uh, the, the great books, weren't written on days that the author felt inspired. He or she ground them out. And here's how you're going to grind out your next book or books. And he said, you won't even need me. You're going to write a minimum of 1 page a day of publishable, proofwritten copy, 1 page a day. That's 365 pages a year, and it'll surprise you. It'll be more than that because you'll sit down sometimes with writer's block. It'll be hard to get started, but you do 1 page no matter how you feel. And then there'll be days you sit down and write all day because you are inspired. Nothing wrong with inspiration, just don't count on it. Well, it turns out, sort of getting ahead of the story a little bit, but a few years later, while writing the closers part 2 using his program, I wrote a chapter, the last chapter in the book, I think is the best chapter on selling ever written by anybody. It runs from page 257 to 381, and I wrote it in one sitting, longhand, on a legal pad. I got inspired, the words were coming, and it's now the last chapter in the closers part 2, and one of the most not only powerful, but popular things I've ever written or anyone else in selling has ever written. How did that happen? I didn't confuse being busy with productivity. I wrote a page a day. I didn't confuse activity with achievement. A page a day that sometimes is 20 pages or 30 pages. But inspired or not, it's never less than 1 page. A little thing just popped into my head. This isn't really on subject, but a lot of things I say aren't. Another little trick that my English teacher in high school, Ms. Edith Griffin, I confuse her last name with yours, Denise. Miss Edith Griffin told me, first day she met me, she said, you're going to speak at graduation. I had a reputation for being funny and I wasn't going to get arrested for anything I did, but I was sort of devilish to the point my family sent me away to private school from that high school, Murphy High School in Atlanta. And then I managed to get thrown out of the private school. So I went back to the
That takes talent.
Murphy High School, and I got in the wrong room the first day I was there. I looked around, everybody was about half my size. So I finally figured out I was in the wrong room, ran down to her room, and came skidding through the door late. The class erupted in laughter because here's Ben Gay being funny. And that wasn't my intention. I just went to the wrong classroom. She looked up at the sound of the laughter and said, Mr. Gay, I presume. Went to the front of the room, turned one of those seats around, where the desk and the seat and the inkwell and everything is all together. A lot of you won't know what an inkwell is, but apparently before I got there, years before, they had ink in a little jar and you stuck your pen in it. She said, Mr. Gay, I presume. And she spins the chair around, puts it right next to her, facing the class. She said, I've heard about you. You're going to sit here facing the class the rest of the year. I said, okay, fine for me. I was going to get more attention. And then she said, and you're going to speak at graduation. And I thought, this poor lady has lost her mind. There's not a remote chance of me being the valedictorian or salutatorian. And she said, and you're going to win the state writing championship. And I'm thinking, I could barely write letters home from the boarding school I just got thrown out of. How is that possible? Well, at graduation that June, I guess it was May, June, I walked to the front of the stage at the Atlanta Municipal Auditorium, gave the two-handed please rise sign, 3,000 people stood up, and I remember thinking, I like this. This is very nice. And I gave the prayer because what I didn't realize was she had control over who wrote and memorized and delivered the prayer. So there I was speaking at graduation because she made me achieve something, not just be busy. And then I won the state writing championship. Again, that was due to her. And the secret she gave me when I first started writing my submission, I started on the top line, and she said, nope, nope, that's not where you start. Flip to the back of the tablet. I flipped back, said last page. I flipped to the last page. She said, now write the last sentence of what you're going to write now. The last sentence in your paper, I want you to write it on the bottom line of the last page now. So I had to think for a minute, but it made me focus in on what I was going to write about and where I was aiming. And she said, now that's your North Star. Everything else you write, flip back to the front page, everything else you write from here on is getting you to your North Star, that last sentence. And she didn't say a page a day. I didn't even have that option. It was start writing now. So she took the rowdy boy who'd been thrown out of 2 high schools, that school, St. Andrews up in Tennessee, and then back to this school to finish up, and turned him into the state writing champion and the deliverer of the prayer at graduation. And it was all because she made me uh, become productive. She made me achievement oriented, and it literally changed my life. As I mentioned earlier, that little prayer at Murphy High School graduation led to 5,000 paid appearances so far, probably that many free ones in prisons and uh, churches and other charitable activities, and turned me into a reasonably well-known speaker, author, and so on all over the world, especially in the English-speaking world. And it never would have happened if people had let me just be busy, if people had let activity uh, be the guide, and if Dr. Napoleon Hill hadn't caught me in time and shaped up my life with his daily success system. Now, the daily success system journal, for lack of a better word, I call it calendar, but it's a little more than that, uh, never leaves the office. I don't carry it, or we have an office in an office wing of our home and upstairs. I never the book has never been out of the office where I'm sitting right now, for fear I would lose it. And if I lost it, I wouldn't know that I'm supposed to call Dr. Evans for my yearly eye exam on Tuesday, December 15th at 11 a.m. That's what, 10 months from now or whatever. And I wouldn't know that I was giving a talk for a large client of mine on the next day. That's good. I'll be able to see them if the first appointment goes well. And throughout these pages of this coming year, there are note after note after note. I've shaped my life. None of them are on the long 4-day weekends. None of them are on Friday night. None of them are on a Saturday or Sunday. My life has been fit into basically Monday through Thursday. When I was working with Dr. Hill, and he was helping me shape up this system, he said, what I want to do is get you down to working 4 days a week. I said, Dr. Hill, I work 7 days a week now. This was back in those early days, and I can barely get it done. How am I going to do it in 4 days? He said, Ben, you've heard the term, the work expands to fit the time allowed. And I said, yes. He said, well, it also contracts to fit the time allowed. He said, you've seen the movies where they're putting on a play and everything's unbelievable and they're running late and they'll never get it put together. And I said, yeah, like a Mickey Rooney movie. He said, yeah. But notice the play always starts on time, on the right day, on the right hour, and gets pulled off. And in the movies is always a big hit. We're going to do that with your life. We're going to shape up your life and tighten it and regulate it so that meaningless activities don't tie up your time, but productive achievement does. And you'll watch the achievements build. Well, Lord knows, 35 books, 5,000, 10,000 if you count the free ones, 10,000 speeches, traveling all over the world, came. That's an exaggeration, by the way. I haven't spent much time in the East, what we used to call the Eastern Bloc, and not a whole lot of time in the Asian countries, but all over the English-speaking world where I wanted to go. I've been everywhere, all 50 states, every major city, most secondary cities, met, literally shook the hands with millions of people and changed my life because somebody taught me how to be productive, and someone taught me how to achieve and how to organize that so you could do it. And that's the daily success system. Maybe someday Denise will do a whole section just on the success system and how you put it together. But oversimplified, I just did that for you. You start with a blank book and you fill it in with personal things and important things first. And then you build your life around it. And then you have the daily discipline to do it. Everything I'm supposed to do today is written. Everything that has a time on it, this call at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Mark Harris at noon Pacific time, etc. Everything has a time. If it has a time, it's highlighted in yellow, so I don't have to guess. And the other thing is listed there. I'll get to as I want to. Now, you were talking about getting distracted and getting off on other things. Even with a system, I do that. We have a fish pond behind our guest house on the other property, and they're big goldfish, and then there's supposed to be mosquito-eating little bitty fish. We started with 5. I've given thousands to the county to spread around. I got thousands left, starting with 5 grand total. Well, I'm always concerned they don't have enough mosquito eggs to eat, so I supplement that on Mondays and Fridays. And it coordinates with another activity I do at the guest house. But my point is, I don't have to go, oh my God, I forgot to feed the fish. Friday, March 6th, I feed the fish. And I don't go off to other things and relax until they're fed. There's other things there, check the pool water level and things. Also going to go with no knowledge over the some changes I want to make in the closers part 6 I just saw there. But I don't have to think about those things. They're written down, they're regulated, and I even have one other little thing, and I'll shut up. I take the important time-worthy things, the calendar's not going to leave the office, so I make a separate note on a sheet of a little memo pad, and I take that over to the house with me and put it up on the bathroom mirror, scotch tape it to the bathroom mirror so I don't have to say, oh, God, I've got to go check the office and see if I'm going to do this or that. On the bathroom mirror this morning, as I went in to brush my teeth, first thing I saw at 4:30 in the morning was 10 a.m. Denise show. And that note will stay up until it's all done, and it'll stay in my calendar here till we're complete with the show. And that's how I run my life. And I started to say the fish is a good example. Let's say today was Friday and feed the fish was one of the items I do. And another one is write, and that's code for write 1 page a day. That's on every single sheet, Monday through Friday. I look down, and if I'm not in the mood to write, I am guilty of feeding the fish first. But it really doesn't make any difference. I get to smile at myself and watch me procrastinate just a little bit because I know that before the day is over, I'm also going to write a page, make all the phone calls and podcasts I was supposed to do. It'll all get done. But for the moment, I'm guilty of procrastinating by feeding the fish up ahead of maybe something that would be a real moneymaker. And so there I cheat just a little bit.
I
And
have a
with that, and
durian.
12 minutes to go, tell me what else you want to hear, Denise.
Hang on. Thank you for taking over the mic, Ben. Sometimes I just want to sit back and listen to you and take notes. And I wanted to take a moment to say thank you for your patience today. We ran into some unexpected Zoom issues when my microphone decided it had other plans. Not sure where it went, but it went somewhere. So thankfully, Ben stepped in and kept the show moving, and I'm very grateful for that. We will see you next week on the Closers Inner Circle podcast when our topic will be repetition creates mastery. Movement without direction feels productive sometimes, but it almost never is. Focus is what creates results. So if you want better outcomes, you have to repeat the right actions consistently and intentionally. So here's your listener challenge for the week. Listen your top 3 revenue producing activities and then remove one distraction this week. That's it, just one distraction. Clear the space so you can double down on what actually drives results. Thank you, and we will see you next week.